My name is Emily Thompson. I am 32 years old. Back when I still trusted them completely, I discovered the crushing truth about my parents' real estate development company 4 years earlier while handling their books one ordinary evening. They had buried the entire operation in massive hidden debt from reckless loans and secret lifestyle expenses, yet they kept smiling at family gatherings like everything was thriving. I stayed silent and quietly built my own protection. Now, in this tense attorney's office, my mother and father are pushing documents across the table, demanding I sign over my separate savings account to keep the family afloat. Their faces showing nothing but cold expectation. My stomach twisted, but a quiet strength rose inside me. I was ready to give them exactly what they asked for and let the pieces fall where they would. If you have ever sat across from your own parents and realized the family you thought you knew was built on something rotten, tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what you are feeling right now. I read every single one, but I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning so you understand how a woman everyone saw as the reliable daughter actually carried a secret for 4 long years, while the people who raised her dug their own grave. My name is Emily Thompson. I am 32 years old, and until 4 months ago, I was still deeply entangled in my parents' small but once promising real estate development company in our suburban neighborhood outside Raleigh, North Carolina. 12 years of my life went into that business. 12 years of late nights, reconciling accounts, chasing down vendors, coordinating contractors, and keeping the books so clean that outsiders thought my parents were financial geniuses. I started helping right after I finished community college and had my son Ethan. My mother, Margaret Thompson, called me one afternoon and said the company needed someone trustworthy to manage the back end. My father, Robert Thompson, nodded along like it was the most natural thing in the world for their daughter to step in unpaid. I was 20 years old, a new mom, and I said yes, because family is family. I kept my day job as an office administrator at a local property management firm, so I would have my own paycheck and my own retirement contributions. But every spare hour went to my parents' company. I did it while raising Ethan alone after his father left when our son was 2. I told myself it was temporary. It was never temporary. My older brother, Michael Thompson, never lifted a finger for the business. He showed up for the ribbon cuttings and the client dinners, shook hands, and took the credit, while his wife Rachel posted glossy photos online about how proud she was of the Thompson family legacy. My mother always defended him. Michael has the vision, she would say with that sweet smile that never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. My father would just pat my shoulder and say, "You are so good with the details, Emily. We could not do this without you." Details. That was my role. Invisible, essential, and completely uncompensated. 4 years ago, everything shifted. I was at my kitchen table late one night, Ethan already asleep, going through the latest batch of statements my mother had dropped off. A transfer to an account I did not recognize caught my eye. Then another. I stayed up until 3 in the morning following the trail. What I found made my hands shake. The main property they bragged about at every holiday dinner had 3 separate loans against it totaling $1,400,000. The actual market value sat at $900,000. We were underwater by $500,000 on a single asset. The company itself carried another $450,000 in vendor debt, back taxes, and maxed out lines of credit. Cars were leased with balloon payments looming. Personal credit cards my parents used for business expenses added another $180,000. Total whole, close to $2 million. They had spent the money on private trips, luxury watches for my father, and an apartment my mother kept in the city that no one else knew about. I sat there surrounded by printouts and felt the floor drop out from under me. My first instinct was to confront them, but I knew my parents too well. My mother would twist it into my fault for not catching it sooner. My father would go quiet and make me feel like the ungrateful one for questioning the family. So I did not say a word. Instead, I did what my late grandmother had taught me. I protected myself. I worked with my uncle, Frank Reynolds, a retired accountant who had always been the one steady voice in our family to move my own retirement savings and a small inheritance from my grandmother into an irrevocable trust for Ethan. The money was legally his future, untouchable by anyone, including me, if things went truly bad. I documented every single debt, every suspicious transfer, every loan. I kept copies at my sister-in-law Rachel's house without telling her why, and I stored encrypted files in a safe deposit box only I could access. Then I waited. I kept working the books. I kept smiling at Sunday dinners. I kept pretending I did not know the empire my parents paraded around town was a house of cards. Meanwhile, the pressure started building in small ways that felt ordinary until they did not. My mother would call on Tuesday evenings and sigh heavily about how the market was tight and how lucky we were to have each other. My father would stop by my house unannounced, Ethan in the backyard, playing, and mention how proud they were that my brother was finally ready to take a bigger role in the company. Rachel would text me articles about adult children who sacrificed for their parents and how it strengthened family bonds. It all felt like normal family chatter until I realized it was not. It was preparation. 3 months ago, the casual pressure turned into something sharper. My best friend Sarah Mills had been my sounding board through everything. We had been close since high school, 20 years of late-night talks and shared secrets. I confided in her about the debts one afternoon over coffee, swearing her to secrecy. She hugged me and said I deserved better than being the family fixer. 2 weeks later, my mother casually mentioned details about the trust I had set up for Ethan. Details only Sarah knew. I felt the first real crack in my chest. Sarah had always asked about my parents first whenever we spoke. How is your mother holding up with the business? Is your father still stressed? She lit up a little too brightly when the topic turned to them. I pushed the suspicion down, telling myself I was paranoid after years of carrying the secret alone. Then came the text that changed the game. My mother sent a group message to me, my brother, and Rachel. Family meeting at the attorney's office next Thursday. Important paperwork for the company future. Everyone needs to be there. No explanation, no context. Just that calm, commanding tone she used when she expected obedience. I stared at the message for a long time. Ethan asked if everything was okay. I told him it was just boring, grown-up stuff. Inside, I knew this was it. The moment I had waited 4 years for. The day of the meeting, I dressed carefully, simple navy blouse, no jewelry that could be seen as flashy. I wanted to look like the reliable daughter they expected, the one who would do whatever was asked. When I walked into Victor Lang's office, the family attorney my parents had used for decades, the air already felt thick. My mother sat at the head of the table, perfectly coiffed as always. My father stood by the window, arms crossed. My brother and Rachel were already there. My brother scrolling his phone, like this was an inconvenience. Victor shuffled papers and avoided my eyes. I took the seat across from my parents. My mother did not waste time. She slid a thick folder toward me. Emily, the company is at a crossroads. We have some cash flow issues that need immediate attention. Your savings account, the one you have kept separate all these years, would be the perfect bridge. We need you to sign these documents transferring access so we can keep operations running smoothly. It is only temporary. Her voice was smooth, almost affectionate, but the words landed like ice. My father nodded. You have always been the steady one. Your brother has the vision, but you have the practicality. I felt my pulse in my throat. This was not a request. This was the demand I had anticipated. I glanced at the papers. The top sheet was a liability assumption form. If I signed, I would be personally guaranteeing the company debts alongside them. My separate savings would be folded into the business accounts. Everything I had protected for Ethan would be exposed. I kept my face neutral, the same calm mask I had worn for 4 years. I understand, I said softly. I just want what is best for the family. Rachel reached over and squeezed my arm. You are such a good daughter. My brother did not even look up from his phone. My mother's eyes flickered with something close to triumph. Victor cleared his throat and mentioned that an independent review might be wise given the amounts involved, $1,400,000 on the main property alone. My father waved him off. We know what we are doing. Emily understands. I sat there listening to them outline how my signature would solve everything while my mind raced through the evidence I had kept hidden. They had no idea I knew the full picture. They had no idea the trust for Ethan was already locked away. They thought I was still the girl who would do anything for family. The meeting dragged on for another 40 minutes of my mother explaining the temporary nature of the transfer, and my father reminding me how much they had sacrificed raising me. Every word was laced with that quiet contempt they had perfected over the years, the kind that made me feel small without ever raising their voices. As Victor prepared the final pages, my mother leaned in and delivered the line that nearly broke my composure. We raised you to put family first, Emily. Do not make this difficult like you have in the past with your little independent streak. My father shifted, but said nothing to contradict her. The room felt smaller. I excused myself for a moment, stepped into the hallway, and pressed my back against the cool wall. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan asking if I would be home soon for dinner. I stared at the screen and felt the weight of every choice I had made to protect him. When I returned, my mother was tapping her pen impatiently. We are almost done here. Just sign where Victor marked. The papers sat in front of me. Signing would transfer my savings and expose me to the full debt load. Not signing would trigger the family isolation I knew was coming. My mother's eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw the calculation she had always hidden behind concern. This was not about saving the company. This was about control. They wanted me tied to their sinking ship so I could never truly leave. I picked up the pen. My hand did not shake. But before I could put it to paper, Victor's phone rang. He excused himself, and in that brief silence my mother leaned closer. You know we would never ask this if it were not necessary, she whispered. Some daughters would be grateful for the chance to step up. The words hung there sharp as any knife. I met her gaze and forced a small, defeated smile. Inside the plan I had waited 4 years to execute was still alive. Victor stepped back into the room, his face pale. There has been a new development with the bank. The officer just called. They have reviewed the accounts and are accelerating the due date on the primary line of credit. We have 48 hours to provide $250,000 in cash or a personal guarantee from additional family members, or they will begin foreclosure proceedings on the main property. The words landed like a hammer. My mother turned to me with that precise mix of concern and contempt she had perfected over the years. Emily, do you hear what is happening? Your savings account is the only thing standing between us and losing everything your father and I have worked for. Sign the transfer documents right now. We have given you a roof over your head, opportunities most daughters would kill for. And this is how you repay us, by hoarding money, while the rest of us actually built something. Do not sit there pretending you do not understand what loyalty means. My father stood up so fast his chair nearly tipped. Margaret, wait a second. This is our daughter we are talking about. We cannot just demand she empty her account like it is nothing. His voice carried a rare defensive outburst, sharp enough that my mother actually paused. Then he forced an awkward laugh to deflect, trying to smooth it over like it was all a misunderstanding. We are all stressed. Let us not turn this into something it is not. He muttered something about needing air and stepped out of the room for a moment, leaving the door cracked behind him. When he came back a minute later, his face was flushed, but he sat down without another word of pushback. My brother leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Come on, Emily. You have always been the one with the steady paycheck and the extra cushion. My wife and I are already stretched thin with the kids and the house payments. This is not the time to play independent. My sister-in-law nodded quickly, her hand still on my arm like she was offering comfort instead of pressure. You are such a good daughter when you choose to be. The family needs you right now. Think about what this would mean for all of us. I kept my expression neutral. The same mask I had worn for 4 years while I watched them dig the hole deeper. Inside, my pulse hammered. I knew the numbers were worse than they were admitting, because I had seen every statement. The anonymous tip to the bank. I had a sinking feeling it was not random. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from Sarah. Your mother mentioned the meeting. She said the company is in real trouble, and you are the only one who can help. You are going to do the right thing. Right, I told her you would never let them down. My stomach dropped. I had never mentioned this meeting or the exact details to Sarah. The betrayal I had suspected was now staring me in the face in black and white. I excused myself for a moment, stepped into the hallway, and dialed her number with shaking hands. Sarah, how long have you been talking to my mother behind my back? She hesitated only a second. A few months. She reached out worried you were pulling away from the family. I thought I was helping by keeping her updated on how you were doing. She is your mother, Emily. She deserves to know if something is wrong. The knife twisted. 20 years of friendship sold for whatever favor my mother had offered her. I ended the call without another word and walked back in the weight of 4 years of secrets pressing harder than ever. My mother pushed the folder closer across the table. See, even your best friend knows what the right choice is. Sign it, Emily. Stop being so selfish. Some of us actually care about what our parents built instead of hiding behind our own little safety nets. Victor cleared his throat again, clearly uncomfortable. I should note that before anyone signs anything, an independent review is still the safest path. My mother cut him off with a sharp wave of her hand. We do not have time for that. The bank is not waiting. Emily knows the situation better than anyone. She has been handling the books for years. This is not a surprise to her. That was when my phone rang again. It was Jenna Brooks, my co-worker at the property management firm. I stepped out once more to take it, grateful for the brief escape. Jenna had been my sounding board at work for the past year, the one person who knew pieces of the family pressure without knowing the full debt story. Emily, you sound awful. Is everything okay? Your mother called the office line earlier looking for you. I told her you were in a meeting, but she sounded pretty insistent. Even Jenna had been pulled in. The net was closing faster than I expected. I thanked her and hung up, my mind spinning. When I returned, my mother was tapping her pen on the table impatiently. We cannot keep waiting. Sign where Victor marked. The bank officer, David Klein, is expecting confirmation by end of day tomorrow that the funds are being transferred. We already told him you would handle it. My father shifted in his seat, but stayed quiet this time, his earlier outburst apparently spent. He just stared at the papers like he was seeing the full picture for the first time, and did not like what he saw. I picked up the pen, my hand steady, even though my heart was not. I had already spoken to my private advisor, Karen Whitaker, the sharp financial attorney I had consulted in secret 2 years ago when the debts first became impossible to ignore. She had helped me lock everything into the irrevocable trust for my son, and had warned me exactly how this moment would play out. Signing would expose me to the full liability unless the documents were worded a certain way. But my mother had no idea about Karen. No one did. I started to sign the first page, slowly, deliberately playing the part of the reluctant but obedient daughter. My mother's shoulders relaxed visibly. That is my girl. I knew you would come through when it mattered. But before I could finish the second signature, Victor's phone rang again. He answered, listened for 30 seconds, and his expression changed. It is the bank officer again. They say they have received additional documentation showing the full extent of the outstanding obligations. They are now requiring the personal guarantee to be signed by all immediate family members present, or the foreclosure notice goes out today. My mother's eyes flashed with something close to panic before she masked it with another jab directed straight at me. Emily, you see what your hesitation has caused. If you had signed when I first asked, we would not be in this position. Finish the papers, now, or I will have no choice but to explain to your son exactly why his mother chose her own money over keeping a roof over his grandparents' heads. The threat hung in the air, sharp and personal. My father looked away, unable to meet my eyes. My brother and sister-in-law watched me like I was the final piece in a puzzle they had already solved. I felt the trap tightening, the 4-year secret burning in my chest. Karen had prepared me for this exact moment, but even she could not have predicted how quickly the bank pressure would escalate or how deep Sarah's betrayal ran. I set the pen down for a second, pretending to reread the liability clause. My mother leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper only I could hear. Do not test me, Emily. Family loyalty has a limit, and you are reaching it. Just as I picked the pen back up, my phone lit up with a new text from an unknown number. It was from Karen Whitaker. Do not sign anything until we speak. I just received copies of the bank filings. There is more here than they are telling you. I excused myself, again stepping into the narrow hallway outside Victor Lang's office, and called Karen immediately. Her voice came through sharp and urgent. Emily, listen to me. Do not sign a single page of that liability transfer. I just got emergency access to the bank filings from David Klein. Your mother filed paperwork 3 months ago trying to reclassify your separate savings as a family asset. The whole bank acceleration was timed to force your hand today. This is not about saving the company. This is about pulling you under with them so you can never walk away. The words hit like a physical blow. 4 years of my quiet preparation, and my mother had been one step ahead in her own way, trying to trap me legally. I leaned against the wall, the cool plaster grounding me while my mind raced. Karen kept talking, outlining exactly how the documents were worded to make me the primary guarantor if I signed anything beyond a token check. Offer them $5,000 from your personal checking if you must to buy time and show good faith, but protect the trust for Ethan at all costs. Walk away from the rest. I thanked her and hung up my hands, trembling for the first time. When I stepped back into the room, the air felt heavier. My mother's face tightened with impatience. Well, we do not have all day, Emily. Sign the paper so we can move forward as a family. I sat down slowly and slid the folder back toward her. I cannot sign the full liability transfer. It would put me and Ethan at risk for the entire $2 million in debt. I will write a check for $5,000 from my checking account today, but that is all I can do right now. The rest needs a real independent audit, like Victor suggested. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's expression shifted from expectation to something colder, more vicious. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to that biting tone laced with years of resentment. $5,000. After everything we have done for you. You ungrateful little girl, we gave you a place in this family, a role that kept you relevant when your own life fell apart after Ethan's father left. And now, When we need you most, you sit there clutching your precious separate account like some selfish stranger. You have always thought you were better than us, hiding your money while the rest of us actually built something. Some daughter you turned out to be. Her words sliced deep, each one a deliberate jab at every insecurity she had ever planted in me. My father's jaw clenched visibly, his quiet anger finally breaking through in a way I had rarely seen. He did not interrupt her this time with an awkward laugh or deflection. Instead, he stood abruptly, his chair scraping loud against the tile. Margaret, enough. This is not the way to handle it. He glanced at me, something like regret flickering in his eyes, but he did not defend me further. He simply pulled my mother aside into the corner of the room for a hushed, tense exchange I could not fully hear. I caught fragments. You are pushing her too hard, and she is still our daughter. When they returned, my father sat down without meeting my eyes again. His face set in a hard line of conflicted silence. My brother crossed his arms tighter. This is unbelievable, Emily. After all the times we covered for you when you were too busy with your office job to help. My sister-in-law shook her head, her earlier fake sympathy gone. You are tearing the family apart over money you never even earned in the business. Before I could respond, Victor's phone rang once more. It was Aunt Linda, my mother's sister, calling in from out of town after my mother had apparently looped her in earlier that morning. Victor put her on speaker at my mother's insistence. Aunt Linda's voice filled the room, sharp and judgmental. Emily, honey, I always knew you had that independent streak, but this is low even for you. Your parents sacrificed their best years raising you and your brother. Do the right thing before it is too late. The pressure mounted like a vice. I felt my son Ethan's future in my hands, the trust I had built with Uncle Frank Reynolds still safe, but now the only shield left. I wrote the check for $5,000, with steady hands, my heart pounding. It was a painful compromise, money I could ill afford to lose from my own emergency fund, but it bought me the legal distance Karen had advised. My mother snatched the check without a thank you. This changes nothing. You have shown your true colors today, Emily. If you will not stand with your family in crisis, then do not expect to be part of it anymore. The meeting ended in a blur of cold goodbyes. Victor looked relieved to see us leave. As I walked out of the building, my phone buzzed with a text from Jenna Brooks at the property management firm. Your mother called the office again. She told the manager you might need time off for family issues. Everything okay? Even my work life had been touched by her reach. I thanked Jenna and promised to explain later, but the damage was already spreading. The next weeks unfolded with relentless consequences I had not fully prepared for, even with 4 years of warning. The bank proceeded with foreclosure on the main property anyway, the $5,000 a drop in an ocean of debt. My mother spun the narrative, beautifully calling family members and painting me as the selfish daughter who abandoned them in their hour of need. My brother and sister-in-law stopped returning my calls. Sarah Mills ghosted me completely after one final text blaming me for stressing your mother out. Even Ethan came home from a weekend at my parents' house, quieter than usual, repeating phrases like, "Grandma says you could have helped more." I tried one last conversation with my father a month later, pulling him aside during a forced family errand at the storage unit where they were moving company files. He listened, his quiet anger from the office, now replaced by weary resignation. You made your choice, Emily. Your mother is who she is. I wish it had gone differently, but I cannot fight her on this. You have to do what you have to do for your son. It was the closest he came to acknowledging the rift, but it offered no bridge back. Dr. Rebecca Holt, the therapist I had started seeing in secret 6 months earlier, when the family pressure first felt unbearable. Listen to the whole story in our next session. This is the cost of boundaries, Emily. It does not feel like victory, because it is not. It is survival. Her words helped, but they did not fill the empty chair at my small kitchen table, where family dinners used to happen. I kept my job at the property management firm, moved Ethan and me into a modest two-bedroom apartment across town, and watched from a distance as my parents' company struggled through short sales and creditor calls. They found new ways to scrape by, blaming market conditions and unreliable support in their holiday updates. I was not invited to any of it. The trust for Ethan remained untouched, my separate savings mostly intact after that painful $5,000 check. But the family I had spent 12 years trying to hold together was gone. Some nights, I sat in the quiet living room with Ethan asleep down the hall and stared at the single photo I had kept of my late grandmother. I had chosen myself and my son over the illusion of loyalty they demanded. It was the right choice, but it left me standing alone in the wreckage, carrying the heavy weight of what I had lost. There was no dramatic collapse for them, no satisfying justice, just the slow aching reality that setting boundaries with parents who had never truly seen me cost me the only family I had ever known. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever had to choose between protecting yourself and keeping the family peace, and it left you feeling more alone than you expected, tell me in the comments what that choice looked like for you. I read every single one, and knowing I am not the only one makes the silence a little easier to bear.